Be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will find them gradually without noticing, and live along some distant day into the answer. And that was said by Rainer Maria Rilke. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Max Igan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I'll be your host for the next hour. And here we are, folks. It's the end of 2012, and this will be my final broadcast for the year. The next time you hear from me, it will be 2013. And so, folks, questions. Living the questions and living along the questions into the answers. And that's the way it happens if you simply allow things to flow. You'll find that you do live into the answers to the questions that you've always had in your life. And the real point is the questions to begin with. It's your ability to question reality, and it's the existence of the questions themselves. And it's important to clearly understand this, folks, that sometimes the answer is not as important as the question. The fact that the question exists and that you are willing to pose the question. That's the most important part. The fact that the question exists. And personally, folks, I think it's good to question everything. I really do. I think that you really need to use a lot of discernment when looking at the world today, when looking at the articles we see on the news, when looking at our society, when looking at anything, really. We live in an age of such incredible deception that you really do have to use a lot of discernment. In fact, I would suggest that you believe probably none of what you hear and half of what you see until you've had the opportunity to investigate it for yourself. And certainly I would suggest that people pay special attention to all of the media hype and all of the political maneuvering that is surrounding the recent shooting event we saw in Connecticut. Because there's some very, very strange and very disturbing things about that case. And there's also some very disturbing things in the trends that I've seen leading up to that case, not only in the mainstream media and all the media hype that we've seen leading up to this, but most especially in the alternate media. And we've seen events that I've been wondering why these events have been going on for some time, but now the timing of events in the alternate media have kind of led up to this very nicely as well. In fact, the timing could not be more suggestive of foreknowledge of this event and necessary steps that would have been taken in its pre-planning stages. And I might touch on that a little bit later on in the show, because I've seen a build-up to this event in the alternate media, and I've seen a mechanism that's been put in place to potentially discredit anybody who really starts looking into this case and really starts questioning this case. It's also been very interesting to see the media hype around this case, saying that anybody who publishes any strange conspiracy theories about the case may be breaking the law. And that's extremely suggestive, folks. I mean, they simply don't want people publishing the truth about it. They don't want people looking into it, and they're suggesting that if you do, we might put you in jail. I mean, you don't see this every day. And that in itself suggests that there is something extremely fishy about this entire thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made such an announcement. And they wouldn't be so scared of people actually looking into things and publishing information about it. And of course, there's the obvious political posturing surrounding the case and the blatant attack against the American Second Amendment. There was also Obama's incredibly wooden performance where he was feigning pain and sorrow and pretending to wipe tears from his eyes that really got me. I mean, I've never seen a more cold and callous and calculated speech, and even the pause and the wiping of the imaginary tear. I mean, I've honestly never seen a colder portrayal of emotion than what I witnessed in Obama's speech that day. And in fact, I think this event in Connecticut is indeed an extremely pivotal event, and I believe it is a plan that has been long in the making. I really do. I think this is going to lead to a huge amount of media hype. Well, after all, it already has. We've even seen celebrities doing extended commercials asking for a ban on gun ownership. So it's going to cause a continued amount of media hype and possibly will mark the beginning of conflict within the borders of the United States, because this event has all the hallmarks of being a contrived and utterly staged event that has been designed specifically to attack the United States Second Amendment rights. I think that's what it's all been about, folks. I really do. I think that this event is the reason we saw things such as the massive purchase of hollow points by Homeland Security quite recently. I think this is why we've seen events such as Waco and the Oklahoma bombing, the vilification of the militia movements throughout the United States, and the random shootings and the school shootings and the Batman shooting. I think it's all been leading to this one event. And I think that this event is the play for all the guns that all the other ones have been necessary to have. I think it's all been leading to this moment, and they are going to justify this attack against the American Second Amendment by all the events that have led up to it. But this one is the ultimate clincher. And as I said earlier, there are so many things wrong with this event that it becomes obvious that that's what it's been staged to do. Because there really is, folks, there's a lot about it that doesn't make any sense at all. And indeed, one may even question whether they are not just wagging the dog. Especially disturbing was the interview that I saw with a man who is apparently the father of one of the victims, who called himself Robbie Parker. I'm sure many of the people listening to this show have seen the interview and have seen the very unusual way this man was acting, the way he was smiling before the interview, and the way he asked, should I just read from the cue card? Which is, of course, not what you would do if your child had been murdered the day before. And there is every indication that Robbie Parker is indeed an actor. And this, of course, brings the entire shooting event into question, whether it really happened or whether they are simply, as I mentioned before, wagging the dog. Because there are a lot of news stories that are fake, folks. They do use actors for a lot of news stories. I know because I've worked in media myself when I was younger, and I also worked building film sets for a long time. I know how easy it is to fake things that you see on television. So the question is, did all these children actually die? Or did they simply take Adam Lanza in there and maybe shoot him and a couple of other people and leave them lying around for the children to see? Because, of course, we had children reporting that they saw a bit of blood and they saw a couple of bodies. We had reports of children saying they saw a man handcuffed outside the building. And, of course, we saw helicopter footage of a man that was lying prone in the forest, surrounded by police as well, indicating that there were at least 3 people involved. So it's almost certain that someone did die on the scene. But was it the children, as we've been told? Because we really don't have anything to go on except what we've seen on the television. And as we've previously discussed, the television is simply not a source that can be trusted. Television is an extremely useful tool for swaying public opinion. Indeed, that is its main purpose, folks. It feeds people disinformation and it controls public opinion. And that's what it does. It gives people a false view of reality. I mean, all it has to do to create a trend is to create a false trend and tell people that that's the way things are trending, and all the people will follow, even if the trend didn't exist previously. That's just what people do. They have very clever and very select people come on and offer opinions to the public, but really the opinions are what is used to teach the public what to think, but most certainly not to teach them how to think. But it's time that the people actually did some thinking and not just believe what their television is telling them, but actually did the thinking for themselves. And it's very important that people wake up to what's going on here, and it's very, very important that the American people stand up for their Second Amendment rights, because the American war machine is what's being used by the controlling system to go out and impose a central banking system, a control grid, upon the rest of the world. And the only people who can stop that are the American people. And that's why it's so important to disarm the American people at this time. Because once you've disarmed the American people and then you set up a situation where basically the only jobs in the country are working in the hospitality industry or working in the military, then you have your war machine. And there's not much protesting anybody can do about it because they don't have any guns with which to do so. And that's why the American people have got guns. It was interesting rhetoric from Obama, I think I mentioned on last week's show, when he said that he respects that people want to hunt and that that's why the American people have guns. But it needs to be made very clear that that is not why the American people have guns. The American people have guns in order to protect themselves against tyranny and government, so that if tyranny does grab a hold of their country, then they have the means to regain control of their country and to restore the republic. And that's what the Second Amendment is for. Should the American people lose the Second Amendment, then America will be completely gone. They lose complete control of their country, and the global war machine is free to run rampant across the globe and impose the system of control that we've all been speaking out against for so long. And that's what this event is being designed to do, folks. In fact, I would say that this is the most pivotal event we've seen staged within the borders of the United States since the 9/11 attacks. And though this is, of course, on a much smaller scale, it has the potential to do to the American people what America has done to countries such as Iraq and Afghanistan. And if the American people are disarmed, I think within a very short time, America will look much like Palestine. And so that's the current state of affairs, folks. That's the situation that we've got. And now more than ever, it's time for the people of the United States to stand up and to reclaim their country and to stand up for their rights. It's extremely important that they do this because the United States of America is teetering on the brink of being completely lost. And if we lose America completely, then we may well have lost the world. Obama, I tell you folks, he's really been the worst thing that ever happened to the United States. This man has done so much damage to the US Constitution and so much damage to American society that it is absolutely staggering. And this seems to be his pièce de résistance, the removal of weapons from the American people. If he can get away with this, then he will go down as the most power-abusing and tyrannical president in US history, and the man who did more damage to the United States and instigated more steps towards globalism than all of his predecessors combined. And the Connecticut shooting event really seems to have been long planned, folks. I mean, within days we've had so much rhetoric from the media about gun control. We've had slick commercial productions featuring well-known actors who are calling for not only gun control but a ban on guns. And this has all happened like clockwork within days of the shooting occurring. So it has been long planned. And a few years ago, folks, I released a film called The Big Picture in 2008. And when I looked at the December 21st, 2012 date, I said in that film that many people are expecting the world to change on that date. And I said that if we don't pay attention, it will be a time of change, but it won't be the change that we're expecting. It will be the time when the New World Order begins in earnest. And that is exactly what we are seeing with this attack against the US Second Amendment that's been instigated by the Obama regime. It's happening like clockwork, folks. You see, the December 2012 date represents a tipping point. It represents the point where we go either of two directions, and the choice as to which direction we go in lies with the people. It always has. And so now it is up to the people to make the decision whether they wish to turn in their means of defense and allow themselves to be subjected to a tyrannical government, or whether they decide it is time to restore the Republic. And that's the choice they've got, and nobody else can make that choice. And really, in many ways, the fate of the world hangs upon the decision that is now made by the people of the United States of America. And that may sound like I'm being a little over-dramatic or reading a little bit too much into this, folks, but I'm not, because it's important for people to understand what America is.